how does someone like Valentinus end up in Rome running for bishop of Christianity when this is a Jewish religion? And this is only in 136 AD. That's early.
Jewish
The
religion.
Gospels are just finished at that point. The Gospel, so Mark, some people think Mark is written around 70, maybe 75, and then Matthew 85 to 95, and then Luke and John is second century, 100s. And all of a sudden in 138 or 136, you had this election going on in Rome for the bishop of Rome, right? Well, how does that happen? I think, so I look at other religions that were going on in the Levant, and there's Phoenician religion, there's a Syrian religion of Elagabalus, the worship of Molech Baal, and the worship of a god named Dusharis, who's an Arabian god, and they all have temples in Rome in the first, second, third, fourth, fifth century until Christianity kind of bans all these cults. Rome, for whatever reason, was like this. It's like New York City. When you come to New York City, you have Chinatown, you have the Arabs over here, and they're all from different places. They all come to New York City to sort of make it for themselves. Rome was like this too.
It's still like that in some ways. Yeah.
Rome was the place where different cults from different parts of the Roman Empire, like I mentioned, Syria, Elagabalus gets his own cult in Rome. Arabian Dusharis, there's a temple in Puleo in Italy that they found. So people were coming from other parts to go to Rome to set up shop, to spread their message. And I think Christianity is doing the same thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Christianity, and I do think maybe, let's go with the story. Maybe Peter really did bring Christianity to Rome. Maybe that's true. I actually think when Peter got to Rome, there was already an existing group of people that were Jewish, Greek-speaking, maybe Latin-speaking people who were already open to the idea of getting away from the temple and bringing something that's more worldly to Rome. And Christianity fits that perfectly. So I think there were people who were
God. It had a hero kind of thing?
Yeah. Like a hero, like a G, like it's very Greco-Roman in the sense of the mechanics behind it, where you have like in Greco-Roman religion, oftentimes the Platonist who believed in the perfect one God, you don't pray to that God, you pray through a daimon. So you pray through Aphrodite, you pray through Dionysus or Apollo or one of these lesser gods to get to the one.
They get the message.
So Jesus fits that role in the Greco-Roman sense, where he's the mediator between you and God.
Right.
So you could see how this would take off in Rome. It makes perfect sense to me. Valentinus, though, just to go back to him, the reason why I brought him up.
At the weave. I don't even have to do it. You're good.
The reason why I brought him up is because when the writers like Hippolytus and Irenaeus, who are writing about him 4 or 5 decades later, calling him a heretic, are not explaining, if he's such a heretic, why was he in Rome? Why was he the second most popular person to become bishop of Rome? Which, if you pull any Catholic Bible out, and almost every Catholic Bible has the list of popes on there, starting with Peter, going all the way to today. If he would have got a few more votes, this heretic Gnostic would have been on the list of popes to this very day, and he lost by according to a bunch of sources, not just the people who call him a heretic. Irenaeus and Hippolytus both say he lost by a slim vote to Anicetus, I think his name was. But anyways, whoever the pope that got elected in 136, that was the one who won that election, and the sources say he built a bunch of churches in Rome during his tenure. But that would have been Valentinus, and who knows? There's a lot of people who say that the Bishop of Rome at that time didn't have a lot of power compared to the Pope today. It's true. But the sources also do. There's a book called the Liber Pontificalis. The book, in Latin, it means Book of Popes.
Okay.
And that book, you can see the early popes from Peter all the way to this Anicetus figure. I think there's 10 popes in between Peter and in the year 136. So Valentinus would have been the 10th pope on the list if he would have won this. Well, who knows if he would have gotten that position. He lives until the year 180, Valentinus. So he was only 36 years old. He was born in the year 100. He would have been 36 years old, 50 more years of his life as the Bishop of Rome. So I think he could have took the church in a different direction.
Sure.
I think instead of having this idea of there's a straight line and they're following the doctrines perfectly from Jesus to Paul and to Constantine, I think if anything, the church is like a ship that goes in different directions based on who's leading the ship. And the doctrine of selling all your possessions, that's not a part of Christianity anymore. That's not like a requirement.
Yeah.
The Carpocratians thought that was necessary. They're reading the Gospels. The Valentinians are reading John, and they're getting their doctrines from John. So the idea of Logos and Zoe and the Triad. And by the way, the Trinity wasn't even a doctrine early on. That's
the Holy Trinity.
The Trinity becomes a doctrine at the end of the 3rd century, early 4th century.
And what was
the Nicene Creed establishes the Trinity. So that wasn't even an official doctrine until the Nicene Creed. But
at the Council of Nicaea, you're saying.
But guess what? The opposition to the Trinity, which was Arius, Bishop Arius, the Arianism, he calls the Nicene Trinitarians, he calls them Valentinians as a diss. Because Valentinus is now a heretic at this time. But the Valentinians believes in a Trinity. The earliest Trinity on the Christian record is the Valentinian Triad.
And what was
it's
it
the
different?
Same word in Greek.
Was it different from the Trinity we know
It's different,
now?
yes.
So
instead of having a God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, they have God the Father, Son, and Zoe. Zoe was this female aspect.
Can't have that.
Yes, they cut that out. They went strictly male.
No females.
Yeah.
This is a
But
sausage factory only.
They do incorporate the Mother Mary aspect of the divine feminine in that sense. But Mary gets venerated with icons. So they still keep some of that stuff. But anyways, Valentinus was a heretic for believing in the Trinity. That's the same word, trios in Greek. It means triad. But it also is the same Greek word that we get the word Trinity from. So they're using the same word, trios, for Trinity. The Valentinians believed this, but they were heretics when they believed in it. But then later on, in the 4th century, it becomes doctrinal. So the Valentinians did influence the way the church goes, even if everyone thinks they're heretics.
So you looked at them as kind of an ignored part of history when you're looking at the church.
Yeah, and the fact that he was so high up in the church, being in Rome,
he was a real guy,
running for bishop, tells you that he was taken seriously. That his ideas were seriously. He wasn't a heretic. He wasn't a joke. There's another figure named Marcion, same time period. Middle of the 2nd century.
Is this going to be another type of Gnostic religion too?
Marcionism.
Okay.
This character, some people think, well, let me tell you this actually. In Luke Acts, it talks about there being 70 disciples of Jesus that were chosen by Jesus.
70.
70, yeah. There's the 12 apostles and then there's the 70 disciples.
12's a nicer number.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. So the 70 are this group of people. They're not named in Luke Acts, but the church tradition names them. So they have records of who these 70 people were. One of them was a man named Philologus, who was the first bishop on record of Sinope, which was a city in the Pontic region of Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey.
Okay.
So Black Sea coast. And he was the first bishop of this city, and he's listed, according to church tradition, both Orthodox and Catholics believe that he was the father of a heretic named Marcion.
Here we go.
So this guy Marcion is literally the son of one of Jesus' chosen 70 disciples. And you think, so here's where things get crazy. There are scholars who think he's the first one to have Paul's epistles, that he was a disciple of Paul, and that he wrote the Gospels.
The father, not Marcion.
No, Marcion.
Oh, Marcion.
And maybe he got it from his father, maybe. I don't know. I never even explored that.
Okay.
His father must have known Paul, right? He's from the first century.
One of the 70.
If this is true, what the church is saying, he definitely knows Paul. And how does Marcion wind up with the 7? So there's scholars who think that there are 7 authentic epistles of Paul. Some people challenge this. Nina Livesey thinks there's none. She thinks they're all forgeries. We can get into that later. Anyways.
We're gonna.
Yeah. So these 7 authentic letters of Paul, Marcion happened to have in his Bible called the Evangelia. And in that gospel, in his Bible, he has Luke, he has the Gospel of Luke, and I think the book of Acts, well, like half of the book of Acts, and then 7 authentic epistles of Paul. That was his Bible. He's the first Christian on record to have a full Bible. Because remember I told you earlier, in the early Christianity, it was likely you would go to a church and they might have one letter of Paul. Maybe you're in Corinth.
Right.
Let's say you're in Corinth.
So they got the Corinthians.
They got the letter to the Corinthians there. Yeah. And they probably might have Matthew. Or maybe the Matthew and Luke. Maybe they have two. Depends on where you are. But the idea of having all these texts into one book comes later. Marcion, this heretic, this Gnostic, has the first compilation of what's called a Bible. He's the first person to put this together. And his ideas are strange too, because he believed in the Old Testament there's two gods. One of them is the father of Jesus, who does all these great things. He gives the laws to Moses. That's the good God. But then throughout the text, he says there's parts of the Bible where there's a second God. Now, there's actually some truth to this, because in Leviticus 16...
Is this going where I think it's going?
With the demiurge thing?
No, keep going.
Okay.
That's not what I'm thinking.
In Leviticus 16:11, I think is the verse, there's this idea of a scapegoat called Azazel in Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
And you offer... The way it works is the Israelites would offer a scapegoat and let him off in the wilderness, and that was dedicated to the god Azazel. And the other god was slaughtered for the sins, and this is during Yom Kippur, was for Yahweh. So there was two gods, an evil god and the good god.
That's what I was going to get at.
And
is that Satan?
Satan is Azazel.
Okay.
They all get lumped together in the same.
What I thought.
Christians do think Azazel is Satan.
Okay.
The Jews think it's different. The Jews think Azazel is a different thing. Satan is not the same as Azazel. They have different purposes. Satan is more like a district attorney figure, like in Job. Yeah, in Job, he's friends with God. In the book of Job, Satan's friends with God. He's like, hey, what's going on with your buddy Job?
30 years to life?
Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
Exactly. So anyways, but yeah, later on, the Christians will lump it all together as one evil entity. But Marcion's going through the Old Testament. And for example, he gives an example of the part where Elijah gets called baldy by these little kids, and Elijah curses them and sends she-bears to maul these kids and eat them.
She-bears?
Yes. This is in the book of Kings. And they kill the kids and eat them, and he just keeps going. So Marcion, who's, he's influenced by Platonism and the idea that the one is perfect, that God would not murder anyone in these circumstances. He's driven by this dogma. So his way around it is, that's the evil God. That's this other God. One of the evil. So every time in the Old Testament where something happens where God looks,
he blames it on
the other God.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.